Egypt is currently facing a major electricity crisis driven by declining domestic gas production, rising demand, and economic challenges. Foreign aid, including a $200 million financing from Saudi Arabia and Libya, have been crucial in mitigating the problem. However, Egypt still faces a significant electricity shortfall, with summer demand estimated at $2 billion. The country's ongoing economic challenges and geopolitical tensions further complicate Egypt's efforts to address the present power issue, raising concerns about potential social unrest and political instability. Meanwhile, Egypt's state-owned gas firm, EGAS, has opened up a tender for 20 spot LNG cargoes for delivery over the October to December period. But the Italian ENI says the LNG exports to Egypt are not likely. Joining me now to unpack Egypt's latest energy conundrum is Robin Mills. He is the CEO at Qamar Energy, a consultancy firm based in the UAE with a focus on the Middle East and North Africa. Thank you for coming to this chat, Robin. Now, what is driving Egypt's gas production lower and the impact on electricity?
Well, the big problem it comes from 2015 when Egypt discovered the Zohr field, a very large gas field offshore, and thought that this would solve all of its gas problems, and converted several power stations to gas, built some very new large gas-fired power stations. And for a few years, it was in a very good situation. It had plenty of gas. It had a surplus. It was exporting gas again, as it hadn't done for a few years. But unfortunately, over the past couple of years, Zohr production has been declining. It seems that the reserves there were smaller than anticipated. The geology was more complex than expected. So the Zohr field is, though it's still a very large field, its production is declining quite fast. And there haven't been really any new major gas developments or gas finds in Egypt since. So Egypt faces several years in which gas production will be declining. And it hasn't really got any easy sources of new gas imports other than these liquefied natural gas cargoes, which are quite expensive.
Now, what are the long-term implications for Egypt's reliance on foreign financing to meet its gas and energy needs?
Well, it's a problem because Egypt runs a big trade deficit normally, and imported gas, is now a significant part of that, along with imported oil as well. And this situation is going to get worse. Egypt will buy more LNG. It may buy oil continue buying oil. It may buy more gas from Israel, one of its neighbors, maybe from Cyprus too. But all this means more export bills. And that puts more pressure on the currency, which is devalued several times, and more pressure on the government budget, which is very stretched. And you mentioned, the bailout they had recently from the IMF, from Saudi Arabia and Libya, and also money from the UAE. And that's all helpful, but that money is unfortunately quickly going to be spent, and they would again be needing some kind of financing support.
Now, I am concerned about the sustainability. How much longer do you think Egypt can sustain its huge demand for LNG from outside its shores?
Well, it's a question of financial sustainability. I mean, there is LNG on the world market, and there will be more LNG over the next couple of years. There are new projects in Qatar, in the US, in Canada, in Nigeria, and other places. So there will be more LNG available. It's just a question of price. So it's an economic burden on Egypt, really. Right now, it's not great because there isn't as much LNG this year, and Europe will need supplies over the winter and so on. But next year things are a lot more comfortable. But it's really about the economic burden on Egypt, and of course the Egyptian economy is struggling for other reasons as well. And one of those reasons is the attacks on shipping in the Red Sea, and that means that the amount of shipping using the Suez Canal has dropped very significantly. That was always a big source of earnings for Egypt, and that's been cut a lot. So Egypt has some other problems to deal with at the same time.
Right. Now that you mentioned the Middle East crisis, how much of this regional conflict in that region is impacting Egypt's gas supply and indeed the economy?
Well, it affects the economy because of the loss of shipping through the Suez Canal, as I say. It affects obviously tourism and business confidence in the region. And as far as gas, so Egypt already imports significant amounts of gas from Israel. It hasn't really got any alternatives to that. But of course, with the current political situation, it's not happy to be so dependent on Israel, and ordinary Egyptians are not happy about that either. So there were some attempts to increase imports from Israel, and those will probably continue. They were delayed by the war, but that's really Egypt's only short-term alternative is to get more gas delivered through pipelines from Israel.
So, do you have any idea how the administration of El-Sisi in Cairo is addressing the decline in domestic gas production?
So really, they have three options, and they're trying to do all of these three. The first one is to import more gas as LNG and gas through pipelines from neighbours, and that is indeed progressing. But as I say, it's expensive, so they have to find financing for it. The second option is to boost domestic production. So they have actually been quite active over the past few months in trying to encourage more drilling, more gas developments, more exploration. But that all takes time. If there's a gas discovery today, it will be several years before that could come into production. So this is not a short-term fix. And the third thing is to boost the use of renewable energy, so solar and wind power, to use that for electricity instead of gas. And that has also been active. So there were a couple of years, 2020, 2021, where things really went quiet in Egypt around renewables. That's now come back. There's a very active renewables program, and that will help. But again, it takes time to build these projects. So it'll be a couple of years before those start helping out.
For me, I kind of find it interesting because I feel like this would be an opportunity for other parts of Africa in terms of exports to Egypt as well. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think for all the big LNG exporters in Africa, they're looking for markets right now. There's a lot of competition, so indeed they will be they'll be keen to look at Egypt as a market. And you have, of course, in North Africa, Algeria, which is obviously near to Egypt as a major exporter, and then you have Nigeria and Angola. Those are really the big LNG exporters in Africa today. But they will be joined in the next few years by Mozambique, by Senegal and Mauritania. And maybe some other countries as well. So there's a lot of LNG opportunity here for Africa to boost its exports, and Egypt is of course a near market for some of these countries.
Now, what are your outlook? What's your outlook on Egypt in the near term? Do you see these issues being addressed as quickly as possible?
Yes, look, I think they realise the seriousness of the problem, and there's a lot of effort to address it now through the options that I mentioned. The problem is that they take time, and this problem with Zohar really kind of came up quite quickly, and maybe they didn't respond fast enough. They didn't realise that production was declining as fast as it was, and how serious effect that would have. So last year they were already still exporting LNG. They actually still had a surplus, at least in some months. So running back into a deficit and having to import was a bit of a shock, and has led to all these gas shortages and power cuts. And that affects the rest of the economy, of course. So they realise how serious the problem is. It's just that unfortunately, the solutions are, 2-3 years at least, and 4 to 5 years in some cases before they really have an effect.
Thank you so much, Robin, for sharing those thoughts on Egypt's power crisis and the shortage of gas in the country. Robin Mills, CEO of Qamar Energy, thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for watching the interview chat. Bye for now, everyone. Thank you.